In the year 1958, the Double Disciples was created by a group of teens that agreed to come together to combat their enemies. The gang started in the northern half of Hyde Park, southern Kenwood area, and in Inglewood. Wealthier whites were bullying several black kids. By the late 1950s, blacks were moving into the area in southern Kenwood at a higher rate as the area became more affordable. Their first rivals were the Rebels, a white racist gang that was 2,000 deep. The Disciples established headquarters at the Hyde Park intersection of 53rd and Kenbark, which became their very first stronghold. Now, the gang will be founded by a group of kids, with one of them being David Barksdale and another being Richard Strong, and others with nicknames like Mango Shred, Prince Oldtimer, Kilroy, Leonard Longstreet, Nightwalker, and many others. The Disciples created the symbol of a Star of David, pitchfork and devil's tails with devil horns. Their early beefs would be against the Egyptian Cobras, the Black Stone Raiders, which would later become the Black Pea Stones. In 1959, Jeff Ford and Eugene Hairston formed the Blackstone Rangers gang in Blackstone Avenue in the Woodlawn area, a symbol to defend themselves against the Devil Disciples and other gangs. In 1960, the University of Chicago backed a program to renovate southern Kenwood and northern Hyde Park by cleaning out slum buildings and renovating some of the older homes. This would increase the value of the neighborhoods and push out poor black families, causing most of the families to move into Inglewood. As the families began to move in the early 60s, the Disciples grew stronger in Inglewood and would gain more territory. A new headquarters would be set up at 63rd and Normal by 63. Meanwhile, gangs are on the street battling for turf, getting busy. August 8, 1964, the Chicago PD would arrest 63 Stones in the yard of Carmel High School during a parade. They planned to fight the Disciples. February 1st, 1966, High Supreme Cobra shot multiple Del Viking members. The Del Vikings would later become a part of the Gangster Disciples. July 21st, 1966, 5 Stones were randomly shot at. The very next day, 14-year-old Danny Butler of the Eastside Disciples was arrested for shooting 19-year-old Bernard Green, which was a member of the Stones. January 9th, 1968, Bernard Wood of the Stones will be arrested for shooting a disciple named Joseph Evans. Now, David Barksdale, aka King David, would take leadership, and his goal was to recruit small gangs in the area to make them factions to make the gang stronger. As he recruited these gangs, they would add disciple to the end of their name. Barksdale's goal was to stop senseless gang warfare and provide protection and take more of the positive route. They opened and operated a gas station, 2 restaurants, community cleanup programs. Barksdale operated a free breakfast program for the community, opening fundraisers, legitimate businesses, enforcing school policy to keep kids in school. They also retired in civil rights groups. February 14, 1968, a shootout between the Devil Disciples and Blackstone Rangers causing an innocent bystander to lose their life. May 8, 1968, King David and a few of his men were shot at while sitting in a car. When the police arrived, he identified Melvin Bailey, Andrew McChristian, and Edward Dinkins. All 3 men were arrested. July 20th, 1968, over 200 gang members would meet near the University of Chicago for a peace treaty. Eugene Hairston and Jeff Ford would meet with David Barksdale to discuss keeping the peace and not fighting each other anymore. Plus, it was already 29 murders that year between the Stones and the Disciples. Jeff Ford earned the nickname the Angel for his ability to solve disputes and form alliances between the Rangers and other gangs. Jeff would give Larry Hoover an offer to incorporate the Gangsters as a part of the Black Pea Stone Nation structure as Gangster Stones, and offer Hoover the less favorable position as an ambassador with the Black Pea Stones Nation. Larry Hoover would take the offer as an insult, and of course he would decline. September 8, 1968, a gangster disciple named Booker Ransom would be killed by a Supreme Gangster. Now, in that same year, different factions would go at it, as Larry Hoover would be shot outside of a high school. This man right here you see in this mugshot was the man that caught the wreck on Larry Hoover. Now, between 68 and 1969, Southside Chicago gangs were getting busy and bodies were dropping. I mean, there were several peace treaties, but it was ended by different factions that didn't even know it was a peace treaty. Now, Jeff Ford and the Black Pea Stones were getting thousands of dollars in government grant money after projecting a public appearance as a community youth group in need of funding to help poverty. They would use that money for both legal and illegal business. Now, these two groups or these two gangs, whatever you want to call it, did a lot for the community. Both groups were receiving money from the Woodlawn organization to operate job training centers for neighborhood youth in Woodlawn. Even though fightings and shootings occurred, they still made it happen. But the disciples fell under the FBI investigation for mismanaging those funds for illegal activities such as buying drugs and guns. Now, the BDs will have their first member in the Robert Teller housing projects, which was controlled by the Cobra Stones. Black disciple Michael Mickey Bull Johnson moved in, and it's been alleged that he was only 12 years old during the time. He ended up running the BD's operation and running the buildings between 49th and State down to 53rd and State in the Grand Boulevard and Washington Park neighborhood in 1968. Now, by 1969, Larry Hoover was already the leader of his own gang called the Supreme Disciples. In 1969, Larry Hoover agreed to unite with King David and share the same throne to form the Black Gangster Disciples Nation. So we have King David, and now we have King Larry. April 26, 1969, at a party on 83rd and East End, a double disciple named Alva Love kills a Black Storm Ranger. Then right after, Jerome Jackson would kill Alva Love. Now, Jackson would be later arrested for murder. June of 1969, the Vice Lords, Black P. Stones, and the Black Gangster Disciples all got together to form a coalition known as the Lord Stones and Disciples, or LSD. This was a unity of the gangs so they could march on the government and demand equal rights, better jobs, and all the oppression and poverty in the neighborhoods. This coalition effectively slowed down gang violence between these three organizations. July 16, 1969, the leader of the Black P. Stones, Jeff Ford, was arrested along with two others for shooting a 22-year-old man for refusing to join the gang. Now, that was the 1960s. Now we have the leader of the Black P. Stones, Jeff Ford, being behind bars. We have Larry Hoover recovering from being shot. And now he is the leader of the Gangster Disciples next to King David. Now remember, King David Barksdale had been working with the leaders of the Black P. Stones on several failed peace treaties. That means he was looking for peace since 1966. And nothing ever worked because guys was just getting busy. Now, next video, we're going to cover the 1970s. That's going to be part 2. So turn on the notifications so you guys don't miss out. If you like the content, give me a shout out in the comments. Like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. Shout out to all my upper echelon members. Shout out to all my subscribers. Follow me on the gram. I'm out.